Welcome to the Writer Reads Short Stories. This one is Harper and the Unicorn, part 1 of 4. Today I sat in the old gum tree looking at the ground below. A footpath left a concrete barrier between the edge of the road and the sparse dry grass beneath me. I'd been sitting there for almost an hour when I finally saw what I'd been waiting for. A unicorn, trotting happily down the middle of the road, its hooves tapping on the dotted centre line. There you are, I thought, but I did not say it aloud. Unicorns had very good hearing, and I was already walking the very sharp and slicey edge of a very precarious problem. I watched, and I waited, and I prayed the wind wouldn't shift. Unicorns also had a very good sense of smell. Pretty soon it was going to. There. It came to a prancing halt, still in the middle of the road, tilting its head this way and that until I was sure it had scented me. As I watched, it raised its head and snuffed the air, and then it looked up, and then back down the road, and took a sideways bound off the street and into the shadows of a nearby walking track, overhung by pine-like she-oaks. What the hey? It stayed on the tarmac, making up the combined bike and pedestrian path, trotting swiftly until it reached the first bend, and then it took another sideways bound that landed it 4 meters off the path, looking back toward the road. I watched the tilt of its head, glad I was screened by a fine film of she-oak needles as well as gum leaves. Whatever it was up to, it was being hella cautious about it. I stayed up in the tree, following the ghost white shimmer of its fur as it doubled back toward the bridge. That was curious. As far as I knew, the portal to the other realms only worked one way, and that was the side of the bridge I was on, the side under the she-oaks. Well, I hadn't thought to try coming through that way. When I couldn't see the unicorn's ghostly outline anymore, I scanned the area for anyone else who might be watching, and then slid over the edge of the branch, letting myself dangle by my fingertips before dropping to the ground. Straightening up, I dusted myself off and looked around again. Still no one, not even the guy across the road, and he seemed to see everything. Well, if he wasn't out watching the unicorn, then he wouldn't be out watching me either, now would he? I walked across the road and down the path under the she-oaks. It wasn't hard to find the unicorn's trail. Like big horses, those things weighed close to half a ton. It was a bit hard to hide the divots it had left when landing. The only thing it had managed to do was stop anyone from finding its back trail. And why, I wondered, would it want to do that? The more I thought about it, the more I didn't like it. Unicorns usually travelled in threes or fours, and they almost always travelled with a pixie or 10. This one had been completely alone, and it was acting like it would like to stay that way. Time to find out why before it went and got itself into more trouble than even a unicorn could handle. I let my hands drift down to unclip my holster, checked my body armour was still fastened and hadn't come adrift because I'd caught it on something while climbing the tree, and I kept moving toward the bridge as I did. Unlike the other side, the arch nearest the path was almost perpetually in shadow, but unicorn tracks led past the first arch and under the second. Keeping a careful eye on the near arch, I followed. There weren't many reasons a unicorn would be prancing about on its own, and fewer still for one dancing down the middle of an urban street mid-morning. This had been the third time this week, and twice had been enough to alert me that something was wrong. I'd left a message for my partner since she'd headed out early to chase down a lead on the latest bunch of dust runners in our jurisdiction. Nothing like everything happening at once. Leilani would get it, and she'd be pissed that I hadn't told her about the unicorn when I first saw it. She could just live with that. After the first time I told her about seeing a unicorn, she'd earned some caution, and she needed to own that, elf or not. I pinged the station. Tell Leigh I'm heading in the second arch on the other side of Steggs Bridge. She can follow the unicorn tracks. In the background, I heard what might have been raised voices, but I didn't have time. 3 times, right? That was a magic number in the other world. Sometimes it was a lucky one in this world too. My only question was who was about to get lucky, me, the unicorn, or whoever had called it. I walked under the bridge, making sure to put my feet in a unicorn print every step of the way. Sometimes magic couldn't be replicated. This way I'd be using the unicorn's intention to take me wherever it had gone. I sniffed the air. There was only a faint smell of horse to tell me a unicorn had even been here. But what I was really glad to note was that there was no fetid stench to indicate a troll. Not yet, anyway. I moved under the bridge, taking one step after another in the unicorn's prints, all the while keeping an eye on what I could see of the other side. I didn't want to come out in the same world I'd started in, especially as I didn't think that's what the unicorn was trying to achieve. It was a relief to see the outside world waver, shuddering into darkness before being replaced by a view of some other place entirely. I crept forward, one hand on the butt of my pistol as I slide-stepped to the exit. The unicorn's hoofprints kept going, but I stopped still and looked. I don't know what I expected to see, but I wasn't ready for a combi van parked beside the glass-like surface of a very large still pool, a sizable tent standing off to one side. The tent was fronted by a small wooden folding table surrounded by folding chairs, while two deck chairs and a large gas barbecue were set to one side. The campsite appeared to be devoid of life, but I couldn't see the inside of either the tent or the combi. I crept forward, trying to see which way the unicorn had gone, not surprised when a sudden high-pitched neigh tore through the air. Glancing back, I noticed that the tunnel seemed darker than it should have been, but was otherwise still. When nothing moved at the campsite, I slid forward, remembering to twist my head and look up as I emerged from beneath another bridge in another world. Coming out into the sunlight, I noticed that the light on this side of the bridge was fading, and that ribbons of colour decked the sky. Nightfall, the perfect time for treachery. The unicorn screamed again, and I forgot the shadows, forgot the open cave and the empty campsite, and ran toward the sound. I might not know why the unicorn was here, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let it come to any more harm than it had already found. The lake lay to one side of the camp, but a forest rose on the other, all tall trees clustered thickly together. With trunks like pillars and the gaps between clogged by bushes, I couldn't see a way forward until I remembered the unicorn's tracks. They acted like a path, their shadowed divots clear even in the dying light, even in the cavern-like darkness under the trees. I still hadn't worked out what this land might be, and I had no idea who dwelt here, but I was pretty sure I was about to find out. The unicorn's trail led directly into the forest, the space between its prints extending as though it had come out from under the bridge and started to run. That suited me fine. As I sprinted forward out of the dusk and into an early night, I lost the trail, but it didn't matter. I could hear the unicorn up ahead. Whatever was happening, it wasn't going down without a fight. I pulled my pistol clear as the narrow trail gave way to a more open space, and there, sweeping its horn in a deadly arc even as it lashed out with its hooves, the unicorn fought against those who sought to contain it. I came to a scrambling halt, dropping into a bent-kneed firing position, ready to run or fight, whichever was needed most. "Let him go!" I screamed, and all heads turned toward me. All except the unicorn's. He took the opportunity to down a distracted opponent, striking down two more before reversing in the direction of my voice. I took 2 steps to the side so it had space to reach the path, and so that it didn't block my line of fire, because the things that had ambushed it, I don't think I'd ever seen their like, not in the human dimension anyway. They, for their part, seemed more amused than afraid, although I noted that one or two knew what the pistol was. Their eyes touched warily on it, and they flinched when I aimed it in their direction. "What is it you seek, human?" Well, from the way he said it, the name of my race was not a compliment. I let my lips curl into a snarl. "My friend," I said, although the unicorn and I had never made that acquaintance. The creature's eyebrows lifted and it tilted its head. The unicorn didn't take its attention from the creatures in front of us, but the closest ear flicked back, and it snorted. I wasn't aware we'd left any of its friends behind. And it was my turn to feel uncertain. Just what in all of Hades had I stumbled into? I looked from one of the monsters to the next. All were tall, and had a form similar to the other underworld fae, but that's where the semblance ended. These had flesh the colour of sunburnt brick or ripe persimmons or a stormlit sunset, hair like coal or ice, and eyes as dark and pupilless as any demon's. Thorns formed a double ridge down the backs of their arms, and their feet looked more reptilian than elven, right down to the large claw protruding from the back of their heels. "Then you can give them back too," I snapped, and took one hand off the pistol so I could gesture to the ground in front of me. "Here and now." They might have laughed at that, but the unicorn gave a low rumbling whinny, and their smiles died. "He was supposed to bring his herd in exchange for the pixies," they said, and I felt my skin grow cold, refused to let the fear show in my eyes. His entire herd? What had ever made them think the unicorn would do a thing like that? "Why?" I asked, making it a demand. "We need stock," came the reply, and the unicorn neighed a soft denial. Somehow I didn't think these guys meant mounts, and I certainly hoped they didn't mean meat, but what other form of stock might they need? "Breeding stock," their spokesman said, as though reading my mind. Oh. I didn't know what to say to that. Heard footsteps on the trail behind me in the silence that followed. Before I could respond to that, the unicorn pivoted and lashed out with both hind legs, taking out the nearest elf demon before sidling away so that it could watch both its attackers and whatever was approaching down the path. I didn't need to see the face above the hunting rifle or the steady aim of the HK held by another familiar opponent to know I was hopelessly outclassed. The unicorn gave a soft whicker, its ears pricked, its eyes on me. I lowered the pistol, heard the swift steps as the rifleman came over, his hand held out, demanding the weapon, even as he kept his weapon shouldered and aimed.